The rain fell in sheets across the quiet suburban neighborhood, the sound of thunder echoing like cannon fire in the distance. Houses stood in neat rows, their lights dimmed against the violent sky, but one home in particular seemed unnaturally silent. Inside, a young woman named Claire had the entire place to herself for the night. Her parents had left town unexpectedly, leaving her in charge of the house. She thought she would enjoy the peace, just her, some late-night snacks, and a few horror movies. But as the storm raged outside, Claire began to notice something strange. The electricity flickered more often than it should. Shadows danced in the corners of the living room, and her phone signal kept vanishing. She shrugged it off at first, but deep inside, a gnawing dread began to spread. Tonight wasn't going to be ordinary. Tonight, the storm was only the beginning of something darker, something waiting to break into her fragile sense of safety. Claire curled up on the couch, the glow of the television flickering against the walls as heavy rain hammered the windows. Every crack of thunder rattled the glass, but what unsettled her more was the silence that followed. It wasn't the comforting kind of silence. This one felt alive, heavy, as though the house itself was listening. The old grandfather clock in the hallway ticked loudly, each second dragging with unnatural weight. Claire tried to distract herself with a bag of chips, but her eyes kept drifting toward the large bay window that overlooked the street. For a brief moment, when lightning tore across the sky, she swore she saw a figure standing across the road, motionless, staring toward her house. By the time she blinked, the space was empty. A chill ran down her spine, but she forced a nervous laugh. "It's just the storm messing with me," she whispered. Yet deep inside, she knew the storm wasn't the only thing. The storm grew louder, rain pelting the roof like 1,000 fists. Claire muted the television, suddenly realizing she heard something above her. Faint, measured steps moved across the second floor. She froze, chips halfway to her mouth. Her parents weren't home, and she hadn't gone upstairs since they left. "Old pipes," she muttered nervously, but the sound was too distinct. Heel to toe, pacing slowly. Lightning flashed again, illuminating the stairwell. Nothing moved, but the wooden banister cast jagged shadows on the wall, making it look like a figure was leaning over, watching her. The steps stopped, leaving an oppressive silence that pressed against her ears. Gripping the remote like a weapon, Claire debated calling someone, but her phone showed only one bar of service. Another thunderclap shook the house, and the footsteps resumed, this time moving faster, as though whoever, or whatever it was upstairs, knew she was listening. Claire forced herself to climb the stairs, heart pounding in rhythm with the storm. The hallway stretched long and narrow, lined with family photos that seemed to follow her every step. Just as she reached the top, the lights flickered violently before plunging the entire house into darkness. Only the intermittent lightning from outside lit her path, casting warped shadows across the walls. Claire clutched the railing, whispering a shaky prayer. Then, as if mocking her, one light bulb above her head buzzed and flickered back to life, glowing faintly. It illuminated something at the far end of the hallway. Her bedroom door was wide open, though she was certain she had closed it earlier. The faint sound of fabric rustling drifted out, like someone shifting inside. She wanted to run, to scream, but her legs betrayed her, rooted in place. The storm outside cracked open again, and in that blinding flash, her breath came in ragged bursts as she stepped cautiously toward her bedroom. The door creaked louder than it should, each inch an accusation in the silence. Inside, the air felt colder, heavier. She scanned the room, bed neatly made, window locked, nothing unusual. Then, from the closet, came a soft, breathy whisper. "Claire." The sound was unmistakable, dragging her name like a hiss. Her blood ran cold. No one should know she was home alone. She stumbled backward, her shoulder knocking into the lamp on the nightstand. It toppled, shattering against the floor, and once again, the house went dark. In the silence that followed, she could hear her heartbeat thundering in her ears. And then, layered beneath the storm, came laughter, soft, childlike, echoing from the closet. It grew. Claire stumbled back into the hallway, desperate for safety, when a deep creak echoed from downstairs. The basement door, heavy and usually stiff, had opened on its own. A draft of icy air poured out, chilling her skin. She leaned over the banister, staring down into the yawning, black void below. The door swayed slowly, creaking with each motion, and the faint smell of damp earth drifted upward. She could hear faint dripping sounds from below, like water hitting stone. Though the basement had always been dry, the thought of descending terrified her. Yet she couldn't ignore the pull. Something wanted her down there. Gathering what little courage she had, Claire crept downstairs, flashlight trembling in her hand. Her pulse hammered as she fumbled with the flashlight, smacking it until the beam flickered weakly back on. The cone of light cut into the basement, revealing dusty shelves, stacked boxes, and old furniture draped in sheets. Yet something was wrong. The shadows didn't sit still. They writhed, stretching unnaturally across the walls, as though alive. Claire swallowed hard, forcing her legs to carry her down the creaking steps. Each footfall echoed too loudly, bouncing back to her like a mocking chorus. At the bottom, she swept the beam around and froze. One of the covered shapes seemed taller than it should be, human-shaped, standing unnaturally still. Her breath caught. She blinked, and it was gone, just a sheet over a chair. But when she turned, she found new footprints in the thin layer of dust on the floor. They were fresh, leading deeper into the darkness. The storm thundered above, but down here, the silence was deafening. The footprints led her to a corner she rarely entered. Covered beneath a thick cloth was an old mirror her family had inherited years ago but never used. Something about it had always unsettled her, and now In the storm-lit basement, it seemed to pulse with presence. Against every instinct, she pulled the cloth away. The mirror's surface rippled, not like glass, but like water disturbed by wind. Her reflection was distorted, her face pale, eyes darker, mouth twitching into a grin she wasn't making. Racing up the stairs, Claire slammed the basement door shut and pressed her weight against it, chest heaving. Silence returned until a new sound joined the storm. A slow, deliberate scratching traveled along the walls of the house, starting from the basement and moving upward. It was like claws dragging through wood, circling the home. Claire backed away, eyes darting from wall to wall. The scratching grew louder, climbing toward her. She ran into the kitchen, but the sound followed, scraping across plaster, echoing in every direction. Desperate, she grabbed a landline phone, but the line was dead. The lights flickered again, and on the wall near the dining table, 3 deep claw marks appeared out of nowhere, carved straight into the wallpaper. More appeared near the ceiling, then the floor. It was as if the house itself was being marked. Claire collapsed to her knees, whispering. A sudden knock shattered the chaos, echoing through the house. Claire jumped, heart in her throat. Who would be visiting in a storm like this? The knock came again, louder, more insistent. She crept toward the front door, her every instinct screaming not to open it. Through the frosted glass pane, she saw a figure, tall, drenched in rain, unmoving. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then the figure lifted its hand and dragged its fingers slowly down the glass, leaving streaks that looked too dark to be rain. Claire stumbled back, clutching her chest. The figure leaned closer, its face obscured in shadow, and whispered something she couldn't hear through the glass. The door handle rattled, shaking violently, as though someone or something was trying to get in. Lightning flashed, illuminating the porch for just a heartbeat. In that flash, the figure was gone. The storm raged on as Claire retreated, but the house refused to let her rest. The upstairs floor groaned again, heavier this time, as though multiple people were walking. Against her better judgment, she crept up the stairs, each step groaning in protest. Her flashlight barely clung to life, casting thin beams across the hallway. As she reached her room, her heart dropped. Every door upstairs was now wide open. The guest room, her parents' room, even the attic hatch had been pulled down. Cold air rushed from above, carrying the faint sound of whispers. She turned to run, but froze as she noticed something new. Muddy footprints now trailed along the hallway carpet, leading from one room. Claire pressed her back against the door, trying to shut out the whispers. Suddenly, the sharp crash of breaking glass erupted from inside her room. She spun around, flashlight beam landing on the far window. The glass had shattered inward, shards scattered across the carpet. Rain now pouring in. But there was no sign of what had broken it. She edged closer, praying it was just the storm. That's when she noticed the shards weren't just scattered. They formed a shape, jagged pieces aligned into a crude outline of a hand, palm pressed flat against the floorboards. Her stomach twisted. She staggered back, bumping into her dresser, when the mirror above it suddenly cracked down the middle, splitting her reflection in two. One side showed her trembling, pale, and terrified. The other grinned back at her, lips curling into a grotesque smile. She dropped the flashlight, and in the brief dark before she could scream, the sound of something shifting above her drew her gaze upward. The attic hatch creaked open wider, the wooden ladder unfolding by itself. Cold air poured down, carrying the scent of dust and something rotten. Claire's breath caught as faint scratching echoed from above, followed by a low thump, like something heavy dragging across the floorboards. Against her will, she found herself stepping closer, drawn by an invisible pull. Lightning illuminated the hallway through her broken window, and in that flash, she saw something peering down from the attic. Two glowing eyes, unblinking, fixed on her. She stumbled back, but the ladder shook violently, as though something was descending. The whispers returned, louder now, echoing from every corner of the house. Claire slammed her bedroom door again, but it rattled. Claire grabbed her dead phone, praying for a miracle. She held it to the window, desperate for signal, but instead of bars, the screen glowed white, lines of static crawling across it. Then, words appeared. "Let me in." She dropped it with a scream, and at that exact moment, the last of the house's power died. Lights extinguished. Clocks stopped ticking. Even the storm outside seemed to mute. Darkness swallowed everything. In that suffocating silence, Claire realized she could no longer hear the rain. Her stomach dropped. How could a storm vanish? She pressed her hand to the wall, only to feel a slow, steady pulse, like a heartbeat beneath the plaster. The house was alive, feeding on her fear. Somewhere in the black void, she heard faint breathing, impossibly close, as though someone stood inches from her face. Her flashlight sputtered weakly one last time. Her scream tore through the silent house as she bolted down the stairs, but the walls seemed to stretch, elongating into endless corridors. Every door she tried led her back into the same room. She was trapped inside a maze that used to be her home. Desperate, she stumbled into the living room, where the storm outside finally returned in a deafening roar. The bay window rattled violently, then shattered, rain spraying across the floor. From the black sky, shadows poured in like smoke, writhing and clawing toward her. Claire grabbed a fallen shard of glass, holding it out like a weapon, though her hand trembled. "Stay away!" she screamed. But the shadows only laughed, voices overlapping, the same laughter she had heard from the closet earlier. They circled her, closing in, until she was engulfed. In a final flash of lightning, Claire's reflection appeared in the broken window, smiling. Morning arrived with eerie calm. Neighbors emerged to find Claire's house strangely silent. Its windows shattered, doors ajar. Rain had soaked the carpets, and claw marks marred the walls. But Claire herself was gone. Police searched for days, combing every inch of the property and surrounding woods. They found no footprints, no signs of forced entry. Only a single handprint smeared on the upstairs mirror, dark, damp, and fresh, as if someone had pressed it there minutes before discovery. Her phone lay on the floor, screen cracked but still glowing faintly. On it was one final message, burned into the static. Still here. The case became a whispered urban legend in the neighborhood. Parents warning their children never to be alone during storms. Some claimed on stormy suburban nights, Claire's laughter could still be heard through the thunder.